Alright, I'm going to disassemble my 2662 Milwaukee impact wrench. I have a bit of a problem with it. When I pull the trigger, sometimes nothing happens, and I'll like pull it 2 or 3 times. And so I'm going to investigate that. Hopefully I'll find something, and hopefully it's just dirt. Of course it worked the first time I tried it. Well, it's working now, so I'm still going to pull it apart, take a look at it, see if there's any dirt, see if the contact where the trigger goes in and makes contact, see if there's rub there. Anyway, I'm just going to take a look at it. It's the first time this thing's come apart. I say I bought it in 2007. It's definitely pretty old. I'm going to look at the brushes. And let's see what it looks like. Let me remove the electrons, hit the camera, and let's start taking it apart. Okay, we're going to use a T20 to remove the screws. So all of these screws in the plastic are M4x16 using the T20, and the 4 screws holding on the gear housing, at least I'm calling it a gear housing, front housing assembly, is going to be an M5x35. So let's take off the housing first and see what that gets us. Oops. 1, 2, I think we need to go a little higher. 14, 15, I don't need drill. Alright, let's get those out. Alright, after taking the 4 screws out, it's still locked in place, which makes sense. So I'm going to have to remove all of the screws and take the cover off, the right side cover, in order to expose what I need to get to anyway. So let's see what happens when I do that. Alright, a little trick I do for some of these deeper ones is I set the bit in place, I let it get a bite, and then I put the tool on top of that. Because if I try and go in, it won't fit. So I put the tool in, let it get a bite, then go on top of it, or I use an extended. Okay, I took out the 9 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and let's see if I can get this apart now. Alright, initial inspection is not too much dirt. You know, I see a little bit of debris from the brushes. No big deal. Nothing really horrific. A little bit of dirt down here. I mean, that's exposed. Well, let's keep digging. Alright, the initial brush life looks pretty good. I don't see myself investing in new brushes just yet. Alright, I see a little dirt on the battery terminals, so I'll clean that up. There's also a spring there, so I don't want that to shoot across the room. Doesn't look like it's high tension. That looks like a whole unit, so let me look at that. Alright, this whole thing comes out and goes to the brushes. Well, I see it's like plugged in here. I could probably disconnect that. I'll look at that a little closer. I'll remove the direction switch. It's idiot proof. You can't put it on backwards. So I do see quite a bit of dirt on there. I'm going to clean all that up. I also see that the red lead is connected to M2, and the black lead is connected to M1, so you can remember how to connect that positive and negative if it makes a difference at all. So anyway, there's that. Alright, I also see quite a bit of dirt on top here, and these terminals are not really coming off real easy. I don't know how they're connected, whether they're hard, whether they're soldered, or whether they're free and they just snap on. So let me look at that a little further. I also may have to mess with the brushes. So let me pull this out of the bottom of the plastic unit. I'm just gonna flip it over like this. Take the plastic unit off again. Just looks like brush debris, normal stuff. Might need to clean that up a little bit. Take a look at the brushes, see if I'll just take it off and free this up, or whether I'll work with it connected. This looks like this just slides apart, but I don't want to deal with that right now, so I'm going to seal it up. I'm going to put some tape on there. Put my ferociously strong tape on there. That's what it says on the roll. I didn't make that up. So that's good enough. The brushes, it looks like you can take the tabs, if I can get on camera, take the tabs and put the pin on the side of the brush. So see how it's on the end pushing down? Let me put it on the side and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so what I'd like you to look at are these two springs right here, these brush springs. Notice how this one is on the back of the brush and is pushing down, and this one is on the side of the brush holding it up. So I pulled the spring back, moved the brush up, and then I used the spring to hold the brush up. So something like that. Okay, first of all, this is the first time I'm taking it apart, so I'm going real slow. I didn't take it apart, put it back together, and then take it apart again for the camera. This is like, you know, take one. So what I did is I grabbed the spring and I held the spring up, and then I used the other pick to pull the brush out, and then lowered the spring back, the spring arm back onto the brush to hold it. And that frees this up, and I'll show you, I'll give you a close-up. See how the brushes are being held up in place, out of the way. And then when I reassemble it, I can just push the back of the brush down and the spring will just hold the brushes in place. So now I have all the electricals out as a unit, and I can look and see what the heck is going on here, why this thing is not functioning correctly, if I can even take it apart. Oh, I see. So it's in a groove. It's not in a groove, it's stopped, and it's in a groove. So that's your forward and reverse mechanism, along with a whole bunch of dirt. Alright, after taking this apart, I don't see any serviceable parts. All I see is quite a bit of debris on the terminal ends where the battery goes in. I cleaned that one up. I just wiped it off. So I'm going to clean all this up. I'm going to clean all the dirt off the top of here. I don't see any way to get into the switch. I know they sell this switch separately, but it's unavailable. This tool is very old. I don't see any dates on here. Could probably look it up with all the code numbers in there, but I'm not going to try and take this apart. Here's the control board. I could pop that off, look at it, but I'm not going to. Just don't want to deal with it. Again, these terminals, I think they're soldered. I don't know. So it is just cleanup time. Alright, so I'm doing my cleanup. I sprayed it off. Get my cleaning tip in here, clean all this off. I'm also going to look at the battery. Make sure the battery's clean, because I really am suspecting that that was my problem all along. Really don't see how the switch was the problem. Where is my battery anyway? Alright, there's my battery terminal, so if there is any dirt in there, it's going to be extremely difficult to get something in there and clean that up. So I'm not going to deal with that right now. Clean up some of that dirt. Alright, we'll get that on the charger, charge up the battery. I'm going to do just some normal cleaning. Kind of clean all that up. You know, just get some of the age off of it. Hide it, do some cosmetic surgery. Well, let's see. Well, this says 2012. What did I say? 2007? That's a big difference. So, boy, I guess my long-term memory is gone. Anyway, 2012 is still a long time. That's almost 10 years. So, I don't know if that's European or not. So I don't know whether that's 8/6 or 6/8. So if it's European, it's what, August 6th. It's American, it's July 8th. But anyway, 2012. Alright, let me do a little before and after. Here's the before. After. Well, let's see, the electric motor should come right out. There's just a pinion on there. Let's see. Yeah, it's moving. Hopefully I don't mess up anything. Yep. So there's the pinion. Ball bearing. That makes it easier to clean. Oh, I see a planetary gear. Let me keep cleaning. Just clean away. So my memory of 2007 to 2012, now that I've had a second to think about it, I had pneumatic tools. And the reason I bought this in 2012 was because I was going to need a larger air tank, and I just didn't want to buy a huge compressor and all that noise and racket. You know, I'm just in a private garage. This isn't a business. You know, just all that noise from that motor, and might have to be 220 current. You know, I just didn't want to deal with all that, and then hoses all over the place. So I decided to go electric. I just thought of something. This is how I became a mechanical engineer. A degreed mechanical engineer as opposed to just a technologist. Was I just took things apart. The trick is putting them back together. Alright, let's keep going, see what we got. I'll just start taking things apart. That makes it easier to get it all clean again. Get into the pinion gear. See what kind of trouble I can get into here. A little bit of grease and a gasket. Maybe put some fresh grease in there. Alright, there's pinion gear. Alright. Which way is up? Doesn't make a difference. Yeah, there is a top and bottom. You see that little lip on there? That's going to be your top. There's your planetary gear. I think I called it a pinion gear, but it's a planetary gear. Now let's see what kind of trouble I can get into. Alright. See how the locks are. See if the locks are damaged, how they're doing. So I call this a hammer, because that's actually what drives it, what busts the nut loose or the bolt, whatever you're hammering on. Seems to be in pretty good shape. Doesn't look like I've really tortured it too much. There's the impact area. The bearing's nice and smooth. I don't feel any coarseness there. Planetary gear looks good. I don't see any damage there. It was working fine. It was just interrupted. So, which I think I fixed. Gave the electrons a cleaner path to follow. Alright, let's see what else we have in here. Alright, so there is the back of the anvil. Looks like everything's just going to come right out. Okay. Take a look at the anvil. Now I like these detents. However, my new 3/8 inch has the other apparatus. My hands are getting greasy. I'm not going to grab it. You know, the O-ring, which I'm learning to like. I mean, I'm old school, you know, old fart. So, you know, that's what I grew up with. I mean, plenty of grease on here. I guess I'll just clean it up, re-grease it, put it back together. I mean, no wear or damage, just contact areas. So that's good. So that hole there is an escape path for the grease, so you can just pile the grease on there, and the ball bearing, when it goes in place there, if it pushes the grease out, it'll come out the hole there. So I'll just pack all this stuff up when I put it back together. It's not a Belleville washer. I feel it's slightly curved. I know you can't see it, but it went on like this. So I'm going to put it back like that. Now let me keep cleaning. You know, grease is a double-edged sword. It's both your friend and your enemy. So it's your friend in that it provides lubrication. It sticks, keeps the oil from running away, and it's your enemy in that it dirt sticks to it also. One nice thing about modern assemblies, like cars and tools and stuff, they're made for assembly. And they're made to be assembled by unskilled labor. You don't have to be a mechanical engineer to put one of these things together. So, you know, this tab will go on the bottom, M18 will be on top, you know, just as things go together, it's pretty much idiot proof. There's usually only one way, and if you have to force it, you know you're doing it wrong, or something's binding and it's incorrect. So it looks like just a top and bottom washer on that thrust bearing. Let me just see if I can get that out of there. Yep. Yep. Clean, clean, clean. So that's a pretty nice little thrust bearing. Pretty cool how they did that. Of course, I'll have to grease it all back up again. That looks like it's going to be fun to clean. I may have to do a chemical wash on that. Alright, there's the ring gear all cleaned up. Clean up the motor mounting plate here. Also looks like I'm going to use about 3 pair of gloves. I got disassembly, cleaning. I know I'm using dirty gloves for cleaning, but then I'll do a grease. Get some gloves for grease, and then I'll do reassembly. 3 pairs of gloves. Okay, so the pinion feels fine. Not that I'm some sort of transmission expert, but there's no gear damage on any of the gears. They spin freely, they only go back and forth, they don't wobble around. Bearing feels fine. It's one of the smoothest bearings I've ever felt. Feels like it's brand new. So there's no way I'm gonna put this in the press and take it all apart and deal with it. Just gonna clean it up a little bit where the hammer goes. Don't want to lose my ball bearing. Grease it back up. Clean it up, grease it up, put it back together. So back in the day, a million years ago when the earth was cooling, what I learned about grease in rebuilding limit torque actuators and power plants was that no matter how much grease you pack in here, you know, 57 pounds or whatever the heck you want to cram in there, it all gets pushed out of the way, and it really only lives in the tolerance gaps in the contact areas. So it's an extremely thin coat of lubricant where you need it, so you don't need to really pack it in and pile it in. Now if you're repacking a bearing, I mean, you have to get it in there, so there'll be plenty of excess there. And you'll see when I grease this up, you'll see grease everywhere and you'll see it all over the place. However, you know, it's going to be overkill. It really and truly is. All right, typical troubleshooting, problem solving is definitely applicable in this case. So my problem was I would pull the trigger and nothing would happen. So I suspected the trigger. Was it the trigger? Probably not. It was probably the contacts between the connector block here at the bottom and the battery. So that's probably what was causing my issue. When I pulled the trigger, nothing would happen, and I would, you know, keep pulling it and it would eventually go. Alright, reassembly. Alright, this green grease, waterproof green grease, it's really for marine application. Ideal for marine. That's really how I became introduced to it. I use this quite a bit. Now in more delicate situations, I'll use Vaseline, and if you do use a petroleum jelly as a grease, use the brand name. I don't know what it is about Vaseline, but if you buy the store brand Kmart, jeez, my age, Target, Walmart, you know, you're going to find that that stuff is a mess as far as using it as a lubricant. Vaseline, the brand name, for some reason works great. However, in this case, we're going to need some grease. I'm going to use marine grease. Marine meaning, you know, for water applications. So anyway, that's what I'm using. Actually, when I was cleaning up, that's kind of what I saw in here, especially when I was cleaning the bearing. Kind of looked like a marine grease or green grease. And I learned about it when I started working on Mercedes. That's when I learned that's what Mercedes uses. Did a little bit of engineering work, figured out why, agreed with them. I can see some green right in there. And been using it ever since. So anyway, that's what I do. Alright, I was thinking about reassembly. What I'm going to do is I am going to reassemble the front housing. So this is the front housing. The assembly goes in here, and I'm going to put that together, slide this on top, and then we'll worry about the motor. So let me go ahead and do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is pack the bearing and the pinion gears. So let me get all that greased up. Alright, a little trick I learned is to use some cotton gloves. Now it's not too hot in here now, it's not the middle of summer, it's not August hot. But anyway, you can put on a pair of cotton gloves if you're really sweaty in your nitrile gloves. So that's one little trick I learned. Also, the gloves go on a whole lot better. See how it's sticky? See how it's like sticking? If I put on the nitrile, if I put on the cotton glove first. Let me get this on. So with the cotton glove on, the nitrile just slides right on. And then all the sweat from your hand, it goes into the cotton. So anyway, just a little trick for you. Alright, let's start greasing this thing up with this ridiculous amount of grease here. I'll pack that in a minute, get it on all of the pinion, get that on 100%. Go ahead and squish it in here. It's open, it's not a sealed bearing. We'll get this all squished in, work that in off camera because it's going to take a while. Get every little nook and cranny done, so let me work on that. Alright, I'm all on way too much grease all over the place. I also put it in the hole so when the pinion goes through, it picks up that grease and kind of pushes it in place. So then I'm also going to put a little bit here to hold the ball bearing. And I also put it in the bottom of the hanger. That'll also hold the ball bearing in place. And don't forget there's an escape path for the excess grease. So lightly coat all this up too. If I can stay on camera, so let me get all that done. Alright, now let me get the seal ring on to the motor mounting plate. Like that. And we'll assemble this together like that. It's plenty of grease on there. I don't need to pile it on here. I'll just let it transfer from what I already have on the bearing and the pinion. Alright, don't forget there is a top and bottom on your ring gear. I don't know whether you can see it now that I've greased it all up, but there is a top and bottom. That's going to go on there like this onto your planetary gear. So we'll just kind of work that in. When everything lines up, it'll just go in there real easy, nice and easy like that. Then we have our motor mounting plate and our gasket on the motor mounting plate. It's going to go on the bearing. And again, that's going to go on real easy. Once everything's lined up, it'll just go on there nice and easy. Alright, we'll put our little cap on here. And that's the bottom of the assembly. Now we'll go on the hammer side. Alright, we can put our little ball in place here. And I think I'm going to stuff that full of grease, especially since there's an escape path. If I can find it, there it is. There's an escape path, so I'm going to pack that full of grease and we'll see how much comes out of there. Alright, let's put our anvil in place. There's the hole right there. It's right about there. Alright, I think we got it lubed. Alright, next is our thrust washer. So I'll grease all that up, put it on with my ridiculous amount of overkill on the grease. Alright, I don't see any extra parts lying around. Let's cap this thing. See if I can get that on. Should go all the way on flush. Oh wow, how about that? Wow, outstanding. Alright, next is the motor. Okay, with the motor I did put a bunch of stuff on the pinion gear, even though I probably didn't need it. And the bearing is sealed, so I really don't need to do anything there. I mean, I could put some grease on it, but like I said, it's sealed, so that's kind of irrelevant. So let me fit this in here somehow, some way. Okay, looks like progress. Okay, I mentioned earlier there's a top and bottom. M18 goes on the top, and this tab here goes on the bottom, and a screw will go through there. This turns, so how does it go on there? Well, it's going to go on there like that. And how do I know? Because I didn't clean this up, and there you can see the black spot where it goes on. So there's that. I'm going to assemble it onto the left handle, and the reason I'm going to do that is because that's the way I took it apart, and that's the way everything seems to want to go. Doing a test fit because I need to get my brushes on there. Now the brushes are the flat side of the plate goes up and the wires go down. So our brush assembly is going to go on here. Real easy. We'll lock it in place. What I'll do is I'll just push the brushes down until the springs snap in place. It's pretty painless. Now, if for some reason you take the springs out, don't put them on upside down. You see how the one leg is down at the bottom? If they're up near the top up here, that's incorrect. They need to be down here in the valley. Okay, next is alignment. Make sure everything goes where it's supposed to go. Alright, let me do a quick double check, make sure I'm in there correctly. Okay, let me get my electricals in place, make sure the wiring is all running correctly. Let's see, I need to get my switch on here. Need to make sure that's in correctly. Need to get my locking spring in place. Make sure that doesn't shoot across the room here. So let's get this all done. Hitting the camera, which is in the way. Alright, everybody seems to be snapped down and locked down into position. Oh, this guy needs to rotate a little bit. I need to get him in that peg. See, this tab goes in that peg. Let me get that done. Alright, that wasn't too bad. Just a little maneuvering. Make sure everything's flush. Alright, this guy should go on no problem. Just work it down in place. Alright, once I got the bottom lined up, everything's just kind of started popping in place here. Let me work on the motor up at the top, because when I took it off, it had to come off evenly, and I see it's not even, so let me work on that. Okay, I was really struggling to get the top on until I realized there was a tab here and a slot here. So in addition to the tab being over here on the mechanical end, on the electrical end, it too needs to be lined up before it'll all click down into place. And then you have to line up the tabs. Also, your bushing fits in a plate, fits in a slot. You need to make sure that's not cocked off to the side. That's a very thin space for it to fit into. Need to make sure your switch is in place and firm. Need to make sure your spring is in place. There's a little tab that it fits on here, so do not assemble it on the right hand side. Assemble it on the left hand side, and then put the right hand side over top. Oh my gosh, and it just fits right together. I cannot tell you how badly I was struggling till I saw that alignment tab on the electric motor. I guess that keeps it from spinning. The motor stays in place, becomes a stator, and then the rotor on the inside spins the mechanicals, moves the planetary gear. Oh my gosh. Alright, let's put the screws back in. I'm going to move my screwdriver back down to a 2 for assembly. Alright, let me move my camera back in my way. I put in 1 screw to hold everything together. So I started off with the top screw. I put that in. Now I'm going to do the 4 front screws. See how much the camera's in the way here. I'm using my long bit because there's a couple of them that are really tough to get to. Alright, looks like I went to a 6 for these guys. Let me do the other 3. Alright, for the 4 front screws I ended up having to go to an 8. I'm going to drop it back down to a 2 for the metal screws going into the plastic, and I'll put the other 8 in. Alright, check my assembly, make sure everything's nice and sealed tight. I didn't goof up anywhere. Showed you the problems I ran into. Alright, let's get some electrons. Alright, my spare battery on the camera is charging. However, I have a green light on the M18 cell. Alright, M18 should be 4 red lights. Alright, we're golden. Should I say we're red? Guess what? Put it all back together and it didn't work. So I'm cleaning the brushes. And what I noticed is there's a little place on there where you can hook the spring. So if you look, there's a little place, a little cutout, if you will, where you can keep the spring when you pull out the brush. So I'm cleaning my brushes. The contact area was completely black again, and I had cleaned it earlier in the video. So I cleaned it again, and now I'm cleaning the brushes. I was able to get voltage through the switch to the brushes, so that's why I'm cleaning the brushes. So here, let me demonstrate it. Put it right there. That holds the brush. Then you can pull it out and clean them. That's what I'm doing. Let me show you the 12 volts or whatever it is. Oops, that's not staying in because I said so. Let me set up the camera. Alright, so in this test I'm going to show that it is not the switch, that it was the brushes. So I have it set up and press the switch. I'm seeing plus 20. Throw the lever to reverse, and I see minus 20. Minus 20. Plus 20. Minus 20. So it was definitely the brushes, so I'm cleaning up the ends, and we'll put it back together and try it again. Alright, reassembly. Alright, now that I have a better understanding of what's going on, let's reassemble this. See if I can put it together correctly without any issues. Now that I know what's going on with the thing. So the motor's in place, the gear's in place. The electrical's in place. There's a little, I know it's difficult to see black on black, there's a little indent right there for the spring. Goes behind a plate. Oops, forgot my switch. Alright, this should go on more better. Oh gosh, a lot better. I don't think I filmed my struggles last time. So let me get those screws in, these screws in. So all of the M4s I did on 2, and I used the long one because there were a couple that were really tough to get. It does help if I go in the correct direction. Now the other guy had on 8, but one of the screws gave me a little trouble and required more than that. So if it does, I'll let you know. 4 went in this time on a setting of 8. It might not have been aligned correctly. You know, they're metal screws going into plastic, so there's already a groove cut out there from the factory. So that, as they say, is that. Now let's do the test, see if I fixed it. So if this works, it was the brushes. Okay, now that was the original test. I don't know if I filmed when it didn't work on me. If I did, I'll leave it in the video and you'll already have seen it. So it was brushes. That was the problem, brushes. I didn't think it was a switch. And thank goodness, because that part's unavailable. Alright, there we go. Clean your brushes on your old 2012 tools here. And I really haven't used it that much. I mean, it's home use, not industrial or automotive mechanic everyday use. So anyway, and brushes are available. I could have put a new set of brushes in there. But, you know, they're only, gosh, not even halfway done. Maybe there's still 5/8 of life left on them. So 3/8 consumed. And it blackened the rotor connection. And so that's all that needed to be cleaned up. Alright then, well, thank you for coming along with me on this repair. I'm so glad that it was nothing major. I'm so glad it was nothing major and I was able to fix it. Thank you for watching.